Yes, I realize that my video may be mirrored. I can't figure out why, but we're going to deal with it. In Make Volume 94, whether it's backwards or not, we explore the fantastic realms of prop making and special effects. From Blade Runner Blimps to Wizard of Oz whirlwinds, we reveal movie model making methods, divulge droid design data, and even turn trash into tabletop gaming treasure. Plus, over a dozen and a half projects, including how to create your own personal LED light show. Um, Um, this volume 94 is on newsstands now. You can also pick it up from the Maker Shed or subscribe at make.co. Please also join us on our Discord server. We'll have a link in the chat, or if you're on YouTube, we'll add a link to that later if it's not already there. And at this time, I'd like to welcome our illustrious panel. Okay. Please welcome Kate Sabaker, a model maker and artist. After attending film school at Chapman University, she lived in LA and worked with New Deal Studios on miniature effects for the film industry. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much. Hi.
And also, Kate was on the cover of this issue, very special guest. We also have Jose Velasquez and James Graber are going to be talking to us kind of together about their Star Wars projects. Jose is a creative engineer from Hazel Green, Alabama, who transitioned from auto body painting to building dynamic droids, collaborating with Disney, and founding PMW Robots. His journey exemplifies innovation and passion, inspiring others to pursue their dreams in engineering and design. And James Graber is an engineer and winemaker in Folsom, California. He discovered the Droid Builders visiting Maker Fair Bay Area with his family in 2016. We'd love to hear that. Jesse Velez is a designer and fabricator and co-founder of Rapture House FX, creating specialty items for film, television, live entertainment, and a variety of creative industries. He's crazy about movies, science fiction, and making in all of its forms. And Camden Mead is an integrated design engineering student and light designer from Boulder, Colorado. And we also have Chief Editor Keith with us, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Keith Hammond, editor-in-chief of Make Magazine. This is our 20th anniversary year, and I've been here just about 20 years. So it's good to see you guys all in person. Thank you for your contributions to the magazine. You helped us put together a great issue.
Awesome. Well, I just want to point out before we get started that there is both a chat facility for those of us joining us in the webinar, and you can feel free to use that. But preferably, if you have a question, we also have the Q&A, which is the ideal way for you to ask questions because sometimes the chat can go by pretty fast and it's hard to keep track of what people are asking or just commenting. And here's a chat question that I'll answer right away. Will this be recorded for later watching? Yes, this is also being streamed to YouTube, and you'll be able to watch it again on YouTube after it's done broadcasting. So anyway, please use the Q&A for any questions that you have. If you're watching the webinar, if you're on YouTube, obviously use the comment functionality, and we'll try to see those as well. And if you're in the webinar with me, then feel free to ask each other questions. And without further ado, I'd love to jump in and talk about Kate's cover project. And Keith was the editor on this one, so I'm going to be leaning on him a little bit to direct things here, perhaps. But Kate, tell us about it.
Yeah, so this was definitely a project that I loved doing a lot. It was one of the first large projects I'd done for Adam Savage. He said, do you know Blade Runner? And I said, of course I know Blade Runner. And he's like, would you do me the honor of sort of taking an existing garage kit and really just amping it up and assembling it and doing all the finishing for me? So it was a dream project. We did a video with Tested about it, and that was, gosh, maybe 6 or 7 years ago now. So I was really thrilled when I was contacted by Make and asked if I'd be interested in writing about that project. So it's been a lot of fun going back and revisiting all the steps that I'd forgotten.
And Kate, you're using some terms that I certainly didn't know before I read this piece, such as garage kit. And what can you tell us a little bit about what that means and kind of for people who aren't in the know in kind of your industry, tell us about kind of, where it came from and how you took it from there to get to what we see on the cover.
Yeah, of course. So most people are familiar with model kits, right? You might go to a store, you might order one online. It comes with all of the parts you need and the instructions, and when you finish, it looks just like it does on the box. Now, a garage kit is something that a home model maker or even a professional does when there isn't a kit you can buy, or maybe the kit you can buy just isn't up to the same quality or detail that they want it, or maybe it's not as accurate as the movie. So this person takes it upon themselves to create an amazing model, not just for themselves, but then to be replicated. They sell that for, maybe a little bit more than the parts cost them to put it together. And then each person gets to purchase that and do it themselves. So this particular kit was made by a really talented maker, Jason Eaton, and I believe um, a lot of people are familiar with him maybe through the RPF community. I got to talk to him a lot through this build, and he was a great guy, offered up tons of help anywhere I needed it, and I think we shouted him out a lot in the tested video because, I mean, the kit was just really great. So yeah, I had a really good starting point for something that I certainly didn't know enough details about when I started. I'm like, yeah, I remember there was a blimp. I did not remember anything about it specifically. So it was great to have somewhere to start before then diving into the research to finish it.
For people that haven't seen the movie, can you set the context of the blimp and what its place is in the movie and what you were making?
Sure. So in the original Blade Runner movie, there is a blimp that flies around through their, Neotropolis type city, and it advertises a new life awaits you on the off-world colonies. And so it's sort of trying to sell this amazing life somewhere else, even though it's in this, seemingly cool futuristic technology, but dilapidated and run down. So even though this was something really cool with big screens on it that I got to make, I also had to do a fair bit of weathering. So it's covered in like old, you know, um, like bill advertisement flyers that are peeling and dirty and stained and so yeah, that was a lot of fun getting to take something that should be nice and shiny like a spaceship type thing in a sci-fi movie and instead going for more gritty realism.
I would have so much trouble making this beautiful, perfect thing and then roughing it up like that. It seems like painful.
That
I know
is
that
my favorite part. Weathering
really.
is the absolute best for me. If all I did was take somebody else's model and weather it, I'd be happy. I could skip the making part if I could just weather it.
And I remember from reading it, there was kind of a controversial weathering or controversial effect that you put on it. You want to share that little kind of Easter egg?
Sure. One of the things that we felt it needed being, if you imagine that this is a giant full-size blimp and it is aged, it is weathered. One of the things you would expect to find on it would be some bird poop. And Adam just got a real laugh. He's like, I think it would help sell the scale. Can we do tiny bird poop? And I looked at him and I started to open my mouth and he goes, I know. There are no live birds in this world. And so, in fact, there would be no bird poop. But he's like, I think it would work. I would like it. And let's look at it as an inside joke. And we both just had a good laugh. Also, I got to see just how tiny of a paintbrush I could get. And, I got to practice a few different shapes, different colors and consistencies. So that was a level of research I didn't expect that morning, but was happy. I can now say I've mastered miniature bird poop.
You can put that on your resume. And then,
Yeah.
so with a project like this, like where is it now? What happens to it? Like, where does it
Um,
go?
because this was Adam's personal project that he had bought this kit. And when I finished it, he said, okay, well, the first thing he does, I think he's talked about this before, anytime he has a new finished piece, he brings it home and he actually likes to sit it next to his bed. So it's sort of the last thing he sees at night and the first thing he sees in the morning. It's a way of like, think of it as like having a newborn. It's your lying in period. It's your, getting to fully celebrate and enjoy your new bundle of joy. So it stayed there for just a little bit. For a while, it was in the cave, his old cave setup. He had a massive T-Rex head that hung over a pool table. And there was talk at one time of putting it on a track so that it went around the T-Rex head, but we couldn't get the cabling worked out well. So I believe now it's either somewhere in the cave. We got it out and used it obviously for this photo shoot. And so I walked into the tested office and I saw it there, and that was my first time seeing it in a few years. So I did a cleanup pass on it first, where I'm like, okay, is this actual dust or dust that I put on it?
And I know that you weren't the sort of LED master for this project, but I definitely know there was some fiber optic stuff that looked pretty cool and that I think was your part, and I'd love to hear more about that.
Sure, this was my first foray into proper fiber optics and maybe my last. I appreciate it. I've always loved the look of fiber optics. I think it's magical. Um, it is a little bit of you don't want to see how the sausage is made because then you're like, why would anybody ever do this? Um, it was torturous just that there were so many cables. I think at some point I counted them up in some of my notes and I put it in an article. And I can't remember the number now, but I have a total of how many fibers, individual fibers there were. And it was a lot. It was a couple hundred, I think. And just having to trace every single one. And for somebody who, like me, who maybe is a little neurodivergent and gets very anxious about the disorder of all of that, it then became, task of trying to wrangle each one. And so I would tape this bundle together and I'd label that for which quadrant that was or what it controlled. So yeah, I basically had to go through, drill out with a teeny tiny drill bit all of the holes where they would stick out, thread each one through, put them into groups, glue them from the back so they stayed in place. I left extra bits sticking out the front purposely so that when you looked at it from the outside, it was hairy. And then once I got them all together, bundled all of those individual sections into one big section, stuck it against what I believe it was some sort of automotive light bulb that shone through a lens and had a spinning color wheel in front of it that we replicated one that was similar to Adam pulled his color wheel out of his R2D2 and was like this. And so we played with patterns and coloring red dots on this clear bit of acrylic wheel till we got a pattern we liked, mounted that all up with a motor. Then when everything looked good and I was for sure how I liked it, I left it that way, finished the paint job, and at the very, very end, snipped off all of the hairy bits so that it was flush to the end. That way I didn't have to worry about any of my paint or weathering obscuring the fiber optics, because after all that work, you're going to see every single one of them light up.
I like the idea of a hairy blimp. I also like I remember it being described as a fiber optic ponytail in the
Yes,
piece. I like that a lot.
yes.
I've got a question from Greg.
Oh,
I remember
sure.
seeing the blimp in Blade Runner. I had no idea how it was made. Now I know. But how hard was it to assemble? How hard was it to assemble?
Um, I mean, it certainly took me a long time. I mentioned in the article, I kept stopping and starting this job for other jobs. So I couldn't tell you exactly how long it took me. It did take quite a long time. I wouldn't say any aspect of it was hard other than, maybe time consuming, maybe just like it takes a lot of effort to do that much research. It takes a lot of effort to solder all of those individual brass antenna. um, I enjoyed that kind of work though, and I enjoyed applying all of the ads. The one part, and I definitely call this out, and as you mentioned, I am not the electronics wizard. So the hardest part for me was trying to get that working. And then the moment I met, Mel, the love of my life savior on this job, everything just clicked into place. And once that was taken on my plate, and the worry was gone. I was like, I'm going to ruin this whole thing because I can't make it work. Once that was gone, it was like, okay, I can do this. I can do the rest of it. So not so hard, just time consuming. You have to love tedious work. But I assume most people who are here in this call and who are watching it like that kind of thing. So hopefully we're all each other's people.
Awesome. Well, we'll have a time for more questions later if people want to enter them into the Q&A. But now I want to switch gears from Blade Runner to Star Wars. So, Jose, I think we're going to talk about your project first, and then we'll maybe weave James in since he's also in the Star Wars universe. I'm gonna hold up this piece knowing that it's mirrored and that nobody's gonna be able to read it, or at least people who can't read backwards. I won't be able to read it. But tell us about the world's first Viper probe droid.
So, can you hear me okay, David?
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay, perfect. So this was an amazing adventure, let me tell you. It was about 2.5 months of chaos. I have a good friend, a lot of the droid builders in the community know him, Stefan. Um, I was having a conversation with him. I had this idea for about a year and a half after watching the movie Solo. Um, I had built my first probe droid the year before, and then I said I wanted to do a new project for MegaCon, and it was October 30th of last year of 24, and MegaCon was February, and I told Stefan, I said, man, I really have this idea. I started the CAD on it, the 3D modeling on it, and he said, why don't you get it done for MegaCon? And I said, because I was kind of in like a what they call a builder's funk, we kind of call it. Like I was just like, man, I don't really know what to build. Um, I have some ideas, I just don't know where to go. And he's like, I'll help you with whatever you need. And he actually ended up doing all the electronics for it, the gun, the fog, the lights on the body. And then I knew I was only capable of doing so much with 2.5 months of time, right? So I had to prioritize where I recruited, which I'm sure James is going to talk about as well, Michael Badley. He's the creator of a lot of the droids that people 3D print, and I recruited him to 3D model the legs of the Viper probe and the guns because they're a lot more detailed. I had some of the data, which I grabbed off of video games and the screen captures. There really wasn't much data on this droid. He had never been created in real life. He wasn't supposed to be. He was just a CGI droid. Um, and lucky enough, in 2.5 months, we completed him and were able to showcase him at MegaCon Orlando of this year.
So Greg in the comments says that's the probe droid from the Empire Strikes Back. Is that accurate, or because I thought this was from a more recent? Is it the same droid?
No, the Empire Strikes Back is the first one, which is the one you see, I believe.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know. It's on the other side of me. That was the
Got it.
first
Got
one
it.
I
Got it.
built from Empire
Yeah.
Strikes Back. The second one is from Solo.
Yeah. Okay. I might have misunderstood Greg's. I'm sure Greg knows what he's talking about, and I misunderstood. So when you talk about gathering that data, like, explain to me how that works. So great, you've got a picture of it, but how do you turn that in something that you can use?
That's a pretty crazy process, actually. So what we have to do is grab whatever information is available to us, which unfortunately was one scene in Solo that there it was a train scene. They're trying to steal coaxium, and I had to basically go frame by frame and see which frames were actually usable, and then take a reference from that frame that we know may be real life, and then I can take estimated measurements off of that and then create that in CAD. So that's the data that I tried to use. I also ended up using the I believe it's the Last Jedi, the video game, the I can't remember what it's called, Fallen Jedi or something like that. It also was in that in both of those games, I believe. And so I took some of that data and kind of compared and then created my own line of measurements to base it off of, so that the scaling, the body, the head, and the legs look proportionate and look like it's supposed to. So,
So I don't know if you remember these off the top of your head, but one of the things I remember being impressed by was kind of some of the stats, some of the pounds of this and
oh,
amount of
I
that.
can
And
tell you, I can tell
okay,
you
let's hear it.
that. So, so total estimated time roughly was about 3D printing time was 2,093 hours. um Through that you're going to have failures of 3D prints, and I had about 150 hours of failed prints, and then I also had printer repairs. So I believe total I had about 10 printers running all at once maximum, because obviously I would get some down, I had to fix them. So total through the whole time printing I had 5 printer repairs, and that total, oh, I'm sorry, and total kilograms of filament used was 62 kilograms.
And another fun fact that I kind of remember was the solution to the rotation, or however you'd, I think you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yes. Oh yeah,
Like,
that was an absolute headache, right? So I created a design for the head, but I underestimated the weight of the whole head piece. I lightened it up. I 3D When I 3D designed the head, because I made the head and the body. I tried to thin the walls, and then my thought process was I thin the wall so aesthetically on the outside it looks like it's supposed to, but on the inside I fiberglass it and reinforce it. Because after doing so many conventions and so many events with the first probe, which is the uh, Empire Strikes Back probe droid, the year before, I learned what to do better on this design, and that was one of my goals, was to lighten up the head. Unfortunately, I did not do that. I actually, it is quite heavy and awkward and big, and on the first design, I did not engineer it strong enough to hold the weight of the dome, and it ended up, after about a week of design and building, it ended up breaking. Through some testing, we did some extensive testing, because obviously the first thing that we care about is safety. We're taking this thing to conventions. It's going to be about 6 to 7 feet above children, adults, and we the last thing we want is that thing to fall on somebody, right? So through redesign, we created, I catted, I CNC plasma'd, and what I welded a new design, and I got it all working before by miracle I got it all working before MegaCon. So
awesome. And just for anyone who hasn't been to an event like this, is the bot like moving around during the show, or is it kind of like static in a booth, or like what's the context?
So I don't make static droids.
Okay.
My goal is every droid that I make has to move and has to entertain. And so yes, as you can see on the main photo of the article, they both have bases to hide the what moves it around. Yes, these things roll around, they spin, they interact, and they're fully immersive in the universe. And so it was a good time, let me tell you.
Awesome. So I wanna switch over to, there's no Q&A items yet, but so just a reminder to use the Q&A if you have any questions. But I want to kind of switch over to James, and then maybe we'll have a moment where we can kind of ask questions of both of you, or you can ask questions of each other. So James, yeah, I think we might have a bit of a spoiler of what you're going to talk about from your background, but go ahead and.
Well, yeah, I can certainly talk about these guys behind me. So, the article is really about the entire droid universe, right? The fact that these days, anytime a droid shows up on screen in one of the parks or even in a video game, someone starts looking at, well, how can I build that droid? And so we have, Jose was talking about MegaCon. We have a lot of different conventions where all the droid builders get together. And so we had R2LA, which was in Los Angeles. One of our original builders, Mike Senna, hosts a bunch of builders at his house, and so I was able to say, hey, I can talk to all these droid builders in one place, and we've got a K2SO and a B2EMO and a chopper and a Treadwell and a mouse and a BB-8 and a DJ Rex and a duckling droid. We've got all these droids, and so I was really able to share all their stories. But yeah, certainly, and also talking about just how droid building has progressed. Keith had his article in 2016, his original R2 build, and yeah, I'd read that article when I started looking at stuff. I think it was 2016.
2016, yeah.
Yeah. I think that was about the time I went to the Maker Faire, and I saw the droid builders, and I thought, wow, this is incredible. This would be a cool project, but full-time job, small kids, can't really do that. But still went on to astromech.net and started researching, started reading, read Keith's original article, made it seem pretty easy.
Got you.
And next year went back to Maker Faire, found the droid builders again, and had a lot more questions. And they had even more droids, so I was able to see even more of what's going on. Kept going back to astromech, and eventually kids got a little bit older. It was about 2019. Said, I've got a little bit of time. I'm going to start this. And this R2 unit behind me, this took me 2 years, but
Yeah.
screen accurate. Lives in my living room. I get to see him every day. Like Kate was talking about, just having it right there next to your bed. Have this guy taking to all kinds of events, taking him to GalaxyCon in San Jose this weekend. And after that was done, I went on the Galactic Star Cruiser, which was the Disney experience in Florida. People call it Star Wars Hotel, but it was very immersive. Once you joined, you went up into space, you were on the Halcyon, you were part of the Star Wars universe for 40 something hours. And there's a droid on the ship. That is SK620. And as we're walking through the lobby, SK rolls by, and my wife says, "You should build one of these." and noted, yes, I should. And it's also great because with the R2 builders, we've got a ton of R2s. And specifically with some of the 501st events, like hospital visits, whatever, you want one R2 because there's really only one R2. And so a lot of R2 builders also build a second droid, so that we can have one person bring R2, one person bring a unique droid, an R5, an R4, whatever. There's just so many droids in the universe. There's no reason to limit anything to just R2.
Do you have a feel for how large the community is of people that are doing this? Because I think it's almost like a Maker Faire bingo is like, you're going to see R2D2 there, no question. So it seems to be everywhere, all around the world. Do you know what the size of the community is?
Yeah, it is definitely in the thousands. You saw that the cover picture on the article was DroidCon. You've got several hundred, just in that one convention, right? And conventions like that happen across the world, internationally, especially with the Star Wars celebration. We'll have a huge droid builder gathering. So yeah, definitely in the thousands.
I was going to say real quick, one thing that I really liked about this article, and the one reason I wanted to see this article was that, the droid builder community, the R2 builders have been around since 2000, early 2000s, or even before that. And we put them on the second issue. If you can see this tiny little magazine cover there, we actually put the R2 builders on the second cover of Make Magazine 20 years ago. And that's pretty much what people were making then. And astromech.net was the community, and I think there were mouse droids at the time and some other smaller builds, but it was very slow going, researching other droid designs from the original movies, the official canon movies were coming out very slowly, and there weren't that many new droids to be built. And suddenly, in the last, 10 years, especially probably since the Disney acquisition, all these new properties, new movies, spin-offs, TV, theme parks now, and the droid builder community has like 20 different major designs to go get started with now. And there's easy ones. There's easy ones that are glorified RC cars, like the mouse droid and the scrubber droid. And there's up to full bipedal AI droids now with the ducklings. It's insane. Like it's
Yep.
now an on-ramp. It's an on-ramp to all kinds of real robotics now. In addition to just you guys are building my favorite Star Wars toys from when I was 10. I could see them in
Keith,
real life.
If I may, I think you hit the nail on the head. But also, what made the community really explode was the availability of 3D printers, right? That has it's opened up the opportunity for the average person to be able to afford it, but also make it feasible, right? People like Michael Badley, like Dave Moog, that are great 3D designers that may not have that. Some people may not have that capability. It opens up the floor to people that don't have that capability but have a
Yeah.
3D printer, and they can Michael really does a really good job at making and so does Dave, a right step by step, buy all these parts, a BOM, build, what was it? I'm sorry. I forgot BOM, but
Bill of materials. Yeah, yeah.
oh yeah, and build materials, and it gives you the opportunity. It gives anyone the opportunity to at least purchase things little by little, 3D print everything little by little, and at the end of the week or end of the month or end of the year, they have all the parts. They put something together, and they have something to show and be proud of. So it's quite amazing.
Yeah, 3D
Question from
printing's
the
been huge.
sorry, question from the Q&A. Greg says James mentioned a treadwell. Does he recall which specific model it was?
It was the model name was written in the article. It was the one from A New Hope.
Awesome. And Jose and James, I'm just curious. I'd love to kind of have you guys ask each other some questions if you have any for each other in the couple of minutes we got left in this segment. No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure at all. Um, uh, James, did you have any questions?
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of 3D printing. What other, certainly you can't just 3D print the entire thing. Kind of what are the other main construction techniques you used in your droid?
Actually, that's a really good question. So, my shop fortunately has a lot of different capabilities: CO2, fiber laser, CNC plasma, and I just about every single one. For the head, I reinforced it with wood and then resin, fiberglass resin, and I CNC plasma, like mentioned before. I designed, add a CAD and CNC plasma and welded the structure that holds the head up and all the mechanics for the head. So um that's why I am not as talented as Mr. Badley at making instructions and pushing it out, because I build to my capabilities, and I understand that that's not available to everybody all the time. And so when I build, I like to build really big, and when I have free time, I like to just I'll CAD something up, cut it up, and weld it if that's what I have time for. But so
Um, we got a comment from Darren who said, "Great to see you all, and honored to share my K2." It was also mentioned in the piece. And
Doctor,
Terry asks, "What are your favorite methods to control droids?"
mm,
Yeah, I can talk because I definitely have a favorite. So this is a PS3 Move controller. They used to be really easy to find. They were like $1 a piece when everyone was getting rid of their PS3 hardware. But what I really like is, I can just be standing like this and controlling my droid with one hand. No one knows. It's complete immersion for people. They can't see who's controlling it unless some people get really aggressive about looking like, wait a minute, it's you.
that's
Just having a small controller that allows you to stay immersive and keep the magic, I really like.
Awesome.
and
Well,
and
oh,
And
Go ahead.
for me, I have mine. This is my. It's not as small as his, but I like FR Sky. It's fully customizable and it gives you a lot of different capabilities. It doesn't hide as well. I'll cover it with a bag, but it's something that I use like for this DO that I built. He uh it allows for like some advanced functionality like stabilization and and also sound control and automation as well. So
Awesome. So we had Blade Runner, we had Star Wars, and I think we're going to go a little bit more old school next with Jesse Velez's piece. Jesse, you want to tell us about what you wrote about?
Yeah, this is an excerpt from a much bigger project I can tell you guys about. This is my third time writing for the magazine. I got to know the folks at Make 3-ish years ago when we did our first walking animatronic thing up here on this shelf behind me. Um, but since then, I've had the opportunity to start writing a book for them that's going to be coming out next year, uh, titled Making for the Movies, and it's all about practical effects in film, which is a giant topic. So I had to be very choosy about what ended up in there, but using really like iconic film sequences as examples. And the Twister from Wizard of Oz is a big one. So the article in there is an excerpt from the book that talks about really like this giant studio scale practical effects world that kind of doesn't exist anymore. But they're great lessons for makers. And really the point of the book overall is just to show that these incredible visuals that people have cemented in their subconscious from seeing movies as a kid were made by tradespeople who did not know what they were doing because they were the first ones to do it. So that's really the point of the article. It goes through Buddy Gillespie, who was the MGM special effects like lead for a good 40 years. And he kind of was the guy who came up with most of the practical solves. But it's really a spectacular effect. And even now, if you haven't watched Wizard of Oz recently, it's worth rewatching because that sequence feels extremely real, even by today's standards. I saw the recent Twisters movie, and even comparing it to that, it feels just so tangible because it's a physical tornado in the back of this scene. And it really combines everything that I love: miniatures, rear projection, and like, well, when they say miniatures, it's a 30-foot tall tornado. Um, so it's not small, but it's smaller than a real tornado. So yeah, it's a big topic, but there's a lot of cool stuff in there.
So you keep using a specific term, practical effects. What does that mean specifically?
Yeah, the definitions are starting to blur a little bit now, which is cool. But to me and to most people, that means effects that are produced physically uh, in front of the camera. So the primary visual is coming from a physical object. Stuff like the LED volume stages for The Mandalorian are kind of blurring that line because it's basically a moving matte painting. So similar to the Wizard of Oz, which had large hand painted backgrounds. Now we're working with digital environments, but they're still primarily being captured in camera. So to me, that's a really exciting thing that like these two worlds that traditionally were kind of opposing each other are collaborating a lot more now. So that's my specialties. I build physical stuff for movies and TV.
And so, for people who haven't seen or can't remember the Wizard of Oz scene, would you like to set the stage a little bit, just to remind people, what it was and how it was achieved?
Yeah, yeah. So Dorothy is coming back to her farmhouse after her interaction with this storyteller, fortune teller guy. Um, and we kind of barely see this twister off in the distance. Her family starts to notice. Everything gets really chaotic super quickly. Um, but to make that sequence, they needed to convincingly show the scale of this giant storm. So two different, I guess three different processes really end up in the same shot. So the far background is the twister. Keith's holding up the magazine there. And again, this is a 30-foot tall fabric stocking. They think it was a windsock from a airplane runway. A lot of this stuff was not documented either, so there's just descriptions of how it was done. And that was hung from a gantry on the ceiling of the studio in front of a giant hand-painted backdrop. And then in the foreground of that were miniatures of the farmhouse and all the landscape. Hidden behind the little rise there was a channel where somebody with an old like dolly cart pushed the bottom of the twister along in a cloud of probably horrible toxic stuff. And that was being fed with air, compressed air to blow dust into the air. And at the top of that gantry, the tornado sock was being spun on a motor, and then all of that was being pulled across the stage. So that by itself is huge, and that's only a third of the scene. So that's the farthest background that we see in the final shot. That was filmed, and then on another stage, we have the foreground elements of Dorothy and the fence that she interacts with. And the scene that I just described was rear projected onto a screen behind her, more fans with debris blowing on her as she runs through the fence. And this is just that's 1 4-second shot of that sequence. The twister is carrying on through the background of like 4 or 5 minutes of her running through the farmhouse until she gets to her bedroom. So it's crazy the stuff that they achieved. Really like inventing all of it. And that's the thing I love about all this work, because at its best it is like combining art and engineering, inventing new things. There's quite a lull in like physical invention over the last, I want to say 20 years, because everything's been digital. But I think that there's opportunity for more amazing like physical innovation now.
From the Q&A, I think we mentioned the name, but they asked, are you aware of the person behind the effects name? I think he was the father of the fellow behind the original effects lab for Star Wars: A New Hope.
Oh, possibly. Buddy Gillespie is the name of the guy at MGM who was the visual effects lead. And he's responsible for all kinds of giant epic movies during that like studio golden age. But I don't know about his children. That'd be a cool connection though.
Especially since we were talking about the
Yeah.
Mandalorian and how that tied in as well. So is, in terms of the book, is this a history lesson, or are there still, because you said, these giant
Yeah.
stages don't exist anymore, but are there still things that can be applied today, or is this more just a anachronism that's kind of interesting?
No, I think that the value, because the topic is so big, I could apply any kind of engineering making to filmmaking. The best way that I've found to learn and like plant ideas for new filmmakers is just to analyze how old stuff was done. Because most of it's just so crazy. You wouldn't guess those things. And the other thing is like, we don't try to reinvent the wheel. If an effect has been achieved, it's good to know how that was done. Most of the book is looking at like significant, well-known sequences like that, stuff that people grew up with just as like visuals in your mind. So there's 5 parts total. Starting off with small scale, which is all about miniatures, model making, stop motion. Then I have a chapter on the illusion of life, which is like creature suits, animatronics. The Wizard of Oz section is in the 5th part, which is fire and ice, which is all about pyrotechnics and atmospherics. But then again, the Wizard of Oz sequence uses every other practice to achieve its final look. So it's kind of all over the place. And then I do have a few like tutorials for how people can try stuff on small scale. Forced perspective is a great example, because if you've ever taken a funny photo in front of like Leaning Tower of Pisa, like that's forced perspective on your cell phone. So, and that stuff is the same techniques. And I think it's important to just like simplify those. As crazy as some of these big sequences are, they're all the same principles.
Awesome. I would like to, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A so we can ask Jesse some questions, or any of our other guests some questions. But I'd like to jump over to Camden Mead now, our final panelist. And Camden, can you tell us a little bit about what you made and what your project was for the magazine?
Yeah, so kind of shifting gears a little bit at this point. It's less like prop building type stuff. I made a personal light show, which I can demo real quick. I'll demo it without audio, so we don't get like copyrighted on YouTube, but I have, videos with audio posted if you feel so inclined to look at that. Here, if I turn it on real quick. Essentially, it's, this hexagon type structure that I put a bunch of lights on that I can control in real time from my computer. If you've ever built like a light show for your house, you're probably familiar with this software. But a muted snippet of a show. Like high frequency control, 50 hertz or something like that. So it's faster than the kind of lights you'd see at concerts. So we can, make cool music sync shows. My article for the magazine is more of a like how I did it, or how to do it piece, not a how I did it piece. So I think I want to talk a little bit more about me basically reinventing the wheel this whole time, and how I arrived at this product. But yeah, I mean, this is funny coming right off of Jesse saying, don't ever reinvent the wheel. That's basically exactly what I did. I came into this sort of intentionally, not really doing any research on what already exists. If you've ever seen when people do like synced light shows on their houses, something like that, then what I settled on is pretty similar to what a lot of them are doing. I did slightly different techniques in a lot of ways, but a lot of it was a learning experience for me as a long time, Make magazine reader, but never really having the budget to make anything. And then finally just deciding to wing it and trying to come up with something. So in essence, it's about 1,000 LEDs. They're all, powered by just a 5-volt DC power supply and controlled by a teensy on this little adapter board that, steps up to the 5-volt logic level that LEDs run at. I redesigned it a little bit for the magazine. Here's a teensy on the redesigned adapter board. It has better, connections so that it's a little bit easier for other people to build if anyone does that. But what I ultimately settled on is pretty simple. When I was designing it, I, like I said, didn't have a ton of experience and just sort of did what I think a lot of people do. It's like, let's try an Arduino. Turns out they are far from good at this kind of thing. They're single threaded. They have a pretty slow processor. NeoPixels, or WS2812 LEDs, what these are, update pretty slowly in the first place anyway. And it, receiving the data serially from the computer and then sending that out to all the LEDs, it was, updating at 1 or 2 hertz, way too slow. And so from there, I was like, I need to figure something else out here without doing, any more research on it, really. My first try was to use a Boolean board. Some of you may be familiar. It's an FPGA board, because I had just taken a digital logic FPGA programming class. I was like, let's do, have 2 isolated cores, one that reads data from memory, sends it to LEDs, and one that reads data from the computer and sends it to memory. And that worked, but not super well, really buggy. I'm not a great Verilog programmer. It was just a mess. Eventually, after more research, I settled on the teensy. Turns out, yeah, what do you know? Somebody had already implemented that. This does basically exactly what I was trying to redesign on an FPGA, but way easier with libraries that already exist. And that's what ended up making it into the article. And the software I use is just called Xlights, and that's literally what it is. It's a software to control, Christmas lights for houses. And I know houses often use, similar technologies to this, but like I said, I wanted to try and figure it out myself. And yeah, it is similar. I saw in the chat, it is similar to DMX stuff for events. That's actually, I'm by trade, I guess I'm a lighting designer. I do lighting design for concerts and whatnot. And I wanted a smaller version of that in my room. So yeah, I built that. The other question, or David, I saw you were about to bring it up, but sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was just waiting to jump in. I was gonna say you said, oh, it's just connected to a 5-volt power supply, but when you're talking about starting out with an Arduino and blah blah blah, I think like one of the things when you start with an Arduino, you're like, oh cool, I blinked to LED, and then you're like, all right, let's hook 10 LEDs up to. Oh cool, I did 10 LEDs. 20 LEDs. Why isn't it work? What's going on? It's not. What's happening? Why is it not? Oh, why is smoke coming out? What's happening? So I wanted to dive into the power supply question, calculation, cautions, etc. As as Jose was also mentioning.
Yeah, luckily at the point when I was building this, I already had a couple semesters under my belt as an electrical engineering student. So I knew enough not to try and power it by an Arduino or whatever, because that I definitely would have fried a couple. I'm trying to remember precisely. I think this one draws around 40 amps. So it's not insignificant. That could definitely start a fire. But especially with these, exposed terminal power supplies, like the high current, low voltage power supplies, the kind of things you find in like RVs is the most common application I see in them for some reason. But yeah, no, figuring out how to power them was definitely really something. I think if I have a little bit more time, I can just share like what
Go for
I'm
it. That's
trying to do
awesome.
next with it, I guess.
Please, yeah.
One of them is, doing a little bit more PCB design. I want to have these pendants that can like hang. They have 10 LEDs on each side. I mistakenly ordered these unassembled. So I, being cheap, decided to figure out how to assemble them on my own and program the, crappy Chinese pick and place machine we have laying around here. But, designed them in these panels and then gonna break them out and hang them from these like adapter strands I built. I'll finish that at some point, get around to it one day. But also, like I said, I'm a lighting designer, but I also work with a couple of friends here and run a lighting and laser design company. And I have a couple of lasers laying around, so I want to integrate those with it somehow and add that to the show to do like a combined laser and light show, and we'll see when I get around to doing that.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the software that's making all this work and how that is programmed to make it all work?
Yeah, the program running on the Teensy, I mean, it just runs on Arduino's flavor of C++. It's a super simple program that just reads data serially from my computer and sends it out to the LEDs using OctoWS2811. It's like a software package written by the guy who made the Teensy actually, to communicate with just massive numbers of LEDs at the same time. And that is much, much easier than my original approach, like I said, of trying to use Verilog and FPGA. And then the computer software, like I said, is X-Lights. If you're familiar with video editing, this is much easier than regular lighting design. It's just a timeline editor. And it can show like previews here, which is super helpful, but it also outputs in real time. So that makes programming new shows really easy. Can make a new one in 3 or 4 hours.
Jose's asking where you order your custom PCBs.
It's all through just JLC PCB because they have, nice discounts for students. And by doing open source hardware, I was able to get some free boards from them, which was really nice. Going to start using PCBWay because they have more features, but, just those Chinese manufacturers are a really good way to get cheap prototypes quickly. And I mean, even larger production, I'm sure they can do that pretty easily too. I just haven't ordered any more than 10 or 15 boards in a single go from them yet.
Awesome. One of the things I was curious about is the use of the RJ45. That seems to be kind of like a standard. But do you know why that's become the standard for these kind of projects?
I mean, I think projects like this have a tendency to just reuse existing connectors because it's easier than building a new one. I mean, if you open up all sorts of things like arcade machines, for example, if you open them up, you'll find all sorts of connectors used for things that they shouldn't be used, or like absolutely do not plug this HDMI cable into TV, you'll break that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I didn't actually know that RJ45 connectors were common in the space of like house lighting and whatnot. I stole that idea from the concert industry. We use something called Sneak Snakes, where we can send, DMX or audio or really anything over just an Ethernet cable using an RJ45 fan in and a matching fan out on the other side. Is sort of where I stole that idea. But I mean, yeah, it carries data and it's designed for digital data, so it makes sense for this kind of project, I figured.
That's really funny because I've seen so many other kind of LED boards like this designed for mass amounts of LEDs, and almost all of them use RJ45. So it's really fascinating that you came up with that kind of independently. That's really funny.
Yeah, it was funny going back and realizing that I had reinvented the wheel the exact same way that everyone else does it.
Awesome. Well, so that's time for Cam's piece and the first kind of portion of the show, and then the remainder of the show is kind of a Q&A and chat between our guests. Hopefully, if you have things you want to ask each other, I just wanted to bring up something that Kate had dropped in the chat. She asked Phil Tippett about the Gillespie's son working on Star Wars. Phil said he's met Gillespie's son and doesn't believe he worked on New Hope, but if there's a connection, it would probably be his grandson. So I just wanted to make sure that people who are watching on YouTube and can't see the chat heard that little snippet. And in the Q&A right now, anonymous attendee asks, is anyone using AI in any of their projects? Does that mean no from everybody, or
I will say, when you talk about the overall droid universe, certainly people use the droids as an AI playground in some cases. So even like astromechs, like what's behind me, people have developed capabilities to have the droid follow them around. Or respond to facial expressions, things like that. Then when you start talking about the duckling droids, these are the actual bipedal droids that were inspired by the ones in the Disney parks. Yes, tons of AI there. Tons of training required to get them to learn to walk and respond to emotions and interact more freely.
Yeah, I don't know what the connection was necessarily, but I am not familiar with the latest Star Wars, and there was one of those ducklings actually when I was at NVIDIA GTC, which is an AI sort of convention, and that was kind of like one of the things they were showing off during the keynote speech is one of those duckling things kind of came up on stage and was interacting with the CEO of NVIDIA, and and Camden just said the exact same thing that I was talking about. Yeah, I was at that thing, and unfortunately don't have enough Star Wars expertise to understand what the context was. But in terms of the interaction, that it seemed to be capable of it, and the movement and stuff like that was pretty impressive.
Then there are builders that have demonstrated walking droids, they don't belong to Disney. They don't have Disney budget or NVIDIA budget yet. They're still able to start generating these things.
Sam, our own staff member, asks, how many new droids are using a color wheel? And please explain that question a little bit. I know that Kate kind of touched on the color wheel technique in the blimp, but does anyone have a feel for how many droids are still using the color wheel technique as opposed to some RGB LEDs or something?
I'd say that's very uncommon these days. I know this was from the Adam Savage comment, and yeah, he was one of the very original droid builders. And so yes, he's using some of those very original techniques like were used in the movies. But yeah, RGB LEDs are simpler, cheaper, and they give a beautiful effect.
Tiffany asks, Kate, what did you use to solder your brass? Torch, soldering iron? Any tips? And I assume tips means like things that you can answer as opposed to things that you're going to put on the front of your soldering iron.
I guess it could work for both. I actually I prefer to solder with a torch when I'm doing brass. Now, obviously, this is in a pretty miniature form, and so I had a small handheld torch. Adam is a big fan of I want to say it's maybe his Dremel torch. I use his a little bit. I also sometimes will just grab like a shop torch, and do that. I love the way that you can make it flow basically by like twisting your hand. The solder flows in front of your flame. And it's really clean, it's beautiful, and you don't have to clean your tip because you're not using one.
That's a tip about a tip.
Yeah.
Awesome. Just a reminder to please drop your questions in the Q&A. I'm trying to go through the chat as well to make sure we capture the things in there that are questions and aren't just comments. And I don't know if we have any questions on YouTube as well. If someone can grab those and feed them to me, I'd appreciate it. Cam says, and Cam, feel free to, you can say stuff. This is a panel. Well, no, you say what you said in the chat.
I really liked how you used the color wheel to do the patterns on the lights. It like reminds me of the old electromechanical programming, like in pinball machines and whatnot. It's a clever idea.
And speaking of electromechanical programming, what's this thing you're talking about in the chat, Keith, about binary load lifters and used to be C3PO or something?
Oh,
What's this?
that's just a quote from C3PO in the. I don't know if he ever said it. Do you say it in the
Ah.
movies or just the novelization? I think he said it in the movie.
I thought you were
Um,
saying that. I was like, I didn't know. What?
No, that was imprinted on my brain when I was 10 years old. Which is kind of what I want to raise is, the reason we still geek out about Star Wars and Blade Runner and Alien now has a new hit show on TV. Is they work. I think of it as the golden age of world building on film, when the practical effects got just so good, and then the introduction of computerized camera work and film compositing techniques. There was just a quantum leap in how real those movies looked. And you can look at a movie from 1975 and look at a movie from 1980, and the jump is there. Um, but it's before CG, and not to take anything away from CG, because computer graphics take just as much design work and creativity and invention, but to actually have to physically execute an effect in a studio or on a stage or out in the parking lot of Lucasfilm back in the day, and make it look real. It is and still is a special kind of art form, and these are okay, this is why the Blade Runner blimp just resonated with me, because just looking at that as a practical prop, how much work had to have gone into that crazy prop. And then they shot it really well, and they had the smoke, and they had the spotlights, and like they sold it with with movie making techniques, but the prop itself is just this insane amount of labor and care and that that to do it physically requires a level of invention and problem solving, like Jesse's talking. Like, they don't know how they're going to do it. They just know they got to do it. And the director gave him a job, and they said, "Okay, we got 3 weeks to figure this out and get it in front of George and make it look right." And just the level of creativity and invention and hands-on labor that was required to create those worlds. And those worlds still stick with us, because, in fact, I like, the rear projection techniques. Now we're seeing green screen kind of replaced rear projection for most uses, and now we're seeing the virtual production, like the LED volume and big LED walls, that's starting to replace green screen in some ways. And so the technology just keeps marching forward, where you can get better and better effects in camera now. But we also see people going back to model making. I mean, there are great shots in the first season of Mandalorian with that ship, and they built practical models and went back, and John Knoll built a whole new CNC camera rig to get those shots that feel like throwbacks to the original Star Wars shots, and they look unbelievable. Like, there's something about a real model that's being lit in a real space that you can't quite fake with a computer, in my opinion. And so
No, you're
I
right,
love,
Keith.
yeah,
You're right,
I love
Keith.
seeing.
I think Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau has taken exactly what you're talking about and taken a step back away from that digital realm, I guess, and went back to the original Star Wars and brought back the practical effects. A good example of that was Skeleton Crew. I know it wasn't very popular, but if you watch Skeleton Crew and look at what they brought back, puppeteering, they brought practical effects. And yes, there was some CGI. There's a mix between it, but the custom hand carved masks, and it's that you're 100% right. There's no way you can fake that. There's no way you can bring it back, and it brings a sense of I don't know how to say it. It's just it brings a sense of the original, like original filmmaking, original creativity, artistry into it, and it really you really appreciate the piece a little bit more. So you're right. You hit the
Yeah,
nail on the head with that.
yeah. I
Hey,
think it
you
just,
worked on some of these at Tippett, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah, so I worked on the skeleton crew. We call her Trash Grab. I'm not sure. What's
Yep.
her name?
Yeah.
Katniss, right?
Yep. That's
And the
awesome.
set for that we did for is it Boba Fett or Obi-Wan? It's the Bomar Monk spider coming across the hill. For a few different seasons of Mandalorian, we've done miniature sets and with I can't remember the name of it, but it's basically it's like an AT-AT, but in a garbage yard that picks things up and moves it around. And then Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau publicly announced that Tippett is currently working on another Star Wars project. So
Awesome. Congratulations.
thank you.
I got to go peek at that stuff a couple months ago. It's very cool. So it's going to be cool. Yeah, I think, and Kate's probably heard Phil like rant about this, but I think part of the value of the practical work is like this baked in time investment that forces the onset work to be tighter. So like they don't have room to make stuff up because you're working with a fixed object or puppet or whatever. And I know like a lot of the value of digital to filmmakers is that they can keep making revisions. But that becomes uh, there's a fall off in the value where they just start second guessing the storytelling, and then that tool becomes a hindrance to the project. I think we ended up with a lot of that stuff with a lot of movies that are not as good as they could be, because the second guessing just carries on all the way up till like a week before release with some of this stuff. Things are being changed, and it's really not something you can do when the visuals are physical.
I got some comments from YouTube, one of which was appreciation for my soldering joke, which I appreciate. But also a question I've been wanting to, we were kind of talking about it a little bit backstage, and I wanted to make sure we got to before we run out of time in about 5 minutes from now, which is, will any of today's guests be exhibiting at Maker Faire? And by Maker Faire, I assume you mean Bay Area, but also any other Maker Fairs that our guests might be going to. Maybe we can go around, maybe in the order that we went through the show. And if you've got any Maker Faire plans, please share them.
I think I started, right?
Yeah.
I am going to be doing with Jesse and I believe Dale and a few other people. We're going to be doing a film festival of short practical effect short films. So we will be, I believe, maybe doing a screening or a panel about that. And I'm in talks to do another panel as well, but I'm not sure if I'm actually going through that. But I'll definitely be there.
Awesome.
I will be there as well, and bringing a bunch of stuff again, like we did last year. The main thing is that we've updated our thing hands since season 1 of Wednesday. I just finished last week. We did like 4 country tour of Wednesday promotional stuff. And our new hands are like worlds ahead of what we did before, using some like off the shelf industry prosthetic humanoid hands. And then also we built a wireless system for those, and they're all controlled with a telemetry glove that I wear. So it's a crazy combo of like digital effects work, because it's originally a motion capture glove for video game and CG work, but we're using that to control a physical robot. So it's a really cool crossover. And we're going to do a demo of that as well in a panel. So I'll have a hand with skin on it, a hand with just the open mech, and then I'll be controlling both at one time with the glove. So it's really cool.
Jose and James, any Maker Fairs coming up?
Not
Absolutely.
currently. Oh, I'll let you go first, James.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm excited because, like I say, I first discovered the droids at the Maker Faire, and it's just crazy to me that now I'm actually hosting the booth for the droid builders at the Maker Faire.
That's awesome.
I just love it so much. So yes, we will absolutely be there. We've got GalaxyCon to get through, and then I'm going to start rounding up all the droid builders from Maker Faire. But we had, I want to say, about 10 different droids last year, and hoping for maybe even more today or more this year. I know we're going to have a full-size standing C-3PO as well, animatronic. Should be fun.
And Camden, any Maker Faire plans or aspirations?
I don't have any right now, but I think it'd be really cool to go to one day.
All right, we'll have to get you to go. So when we say Maker Faire right now, we're referring to a specific Maker Faire Bay Area, which is September 26th through 28th. And tickets are available right now at bayarea.makerfair with an E on the end.com. That's bayarea.makerfair.com. And but there are also a couple of hundred Maker Faire events around the world every year. So even if you're not in the Bay Area or able to travel to the Bay Area, you should definitely check out makerfair.com. Again, that's with an E, for one near you. We've only got about a minute left. So one thing I want to make sure we do before we run out of time is we'd like to do a little sort of group photo screenshot thing. And so if everyone wants to grab either a copy of the magazine or a cool prop or whatever and hold it up and then give us their best smile or whatever, then Jamie backstage is going to grab us and let us know when that's done. Oh, we're just waiting for a thing, I think. Here. Beautiful. All right, let's all say make. Let me know when you got it, Jamie. Okay, she's got it. We can stop smiling. I mean, we don't have to stop. We don't have to stop smiling, but you can stop smiling if you want. Okay, that is actually right on time. So with that, I'll just thank all of our guests for attending. Just a reminder, you can watch this again on YouTube. If you go to makezine.com and click on the YouTube icon, it's going to be the easiest way to get there. Also, if you go to, if you click on the Discord icon from there, or navigate to makezine.com/go/Discord, but really it's just easiest just to go to Makezine and click on whatever the icon is of the thing that you're trying to get to. You can also join our Discord where we can chat about this thing even after the video has stopped streaming, and hopefully some of our guests will be on there. If you have questions later, I'll definitely be on there pretty much every day if you have questions. And just thanks everyone again, and thanks for everyone who is watching, and we'll see you in another 3 months for volume 95, which